So we're checking in. We have so much to talk about from UFC 113 with Kevin Iole. We got to talk about Kimbo. Kimbo is now gone. At least that's what they're saying. That's what Dana White said after the fight. He loses to Matt Mitrione. The argument started immediately on Twitter, online, with some media guys saying, thank God he's gone. No one wants to pay for this guy. And you know what? I kind of fired back and I said, I don't think you know the casual fan. I actually do think the casual fan would pay for another Kimbo fight.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with the decision to cut him because, who's he going to beat? I have respect for Kimbo, and I go back to his Elite XC days. I was not among the Kimbo bashers. In the Elite XC days, my take was, hey, the guy can't fight, but he's trying to learn. Now, I don't think he was in the kind of camp that was benefiting him in his Elite XC days, and I think he had, a year and a half, 2 years, whatever that was, basically that were wasted because he wasn't getting the kind of instruction and overall MMA coaching that he needed. But then when he went on tough and came into the UFC, he got hooked up with ATT, and clearly they were working very hard with him, and you could see that he made progress. But he was starting from such a low point. He was a zero that, can he get there? Maybe he could if they would give him a longer period of time. Although, I think that there's a couple points that you have to bring up. His reputation is as a puncher, as a banger. He does not have a big punch. I said that, your infamous radio interview with Scala, Jared Shaw, where he said there's nobody in MMA that can stand with Kimbo, and I thought that was one of the most ridiculous comments I've ever heard. Kimbo is not a hard puncher, and if he was a hard puncher, I think he would have been more willing to stand with Matt Mitrione, but he didn't even have confidence in his own punching power, so he wanted to take Mitrione to the ground. So from the standpoint of competitiveness, I don't think there's a lot of guys in the UFC that he can beat and really even be competitive with. So that's one thing. I do think that the fans, there's an intrigue about him. The luster is going to wear off as each successive performance is bad. We didn't see the Kimbo power against Houston Alexander. We didn't see it in tough against Roy Nelson, and certainly we saw no evidence of it against Mitrione. So the next fight, I don't think that Kimbo Mania would have been as big as it was before this fight, but I still think some fans would have been interested. Maybe one more loss and that would have been it. So the UFC got ahead of the curve and said, you know what, Kimbo, you're not ready to compete in the top organization right now. So good luck, and maybe we'll see you later.
Well, that said, we rarely see guys cut after two fights after going just 1-1. So was there an extra money element to this where it wasn't worth their while in terms of the money?
Well, guys are cut. After one fight. Let's look at the Hollis Gracie. And I think if Hollis Gracie had shown anything, he'd be around with the last name that he has. There's a guy that Kimbo can beat. Hollis Gracie, but Kimbo was making a lot of money, and he wasn't performing at a very high level. And I think that the UFC rightly realized that, hey, going forward, you're going to lose whatever hardcore fan interest you had, you're going to lose them. The casual fan, I think you're going to lose some of them because, the mystique is being wiped away with each successive fight. Let's be honest, here Matt Mitrione was 1-0 going into the fight. It's not like, he was fighting Cain Velasquez. He was fighting a guy that I think is a talented guy that has some raw potential and that could be developed. But Matt Mitrione is certainly no threat today to win the heavyweight title, and Kimbo was not at all competitive with him.
Yeah, the checking of leg kicks was amateurish. It was pretty bad. So going from here, if you're Strikeforce, do you take a chance on Kimbo? Do you match him up? Why not just put him in there with a guy like Herschel Walker? Would that be a mismatch? That would be a fight you could sell. Or is he so down now it's not worth any amount of money for a U.S. promotion to bring him in?
I personally don't think that's a good move for Strikeforce. I just think it opens them up to more criticism. I think Kimbo, goes to Japan if he continues to fight, and I think that's where, he would be the best. I think that, the Japanese tend to like fighters with that kind of look. It's a different look, and they like that. I think that, Kimbo would have some success, can make some money over there. If you put him in Strikeforce, they got some real fighters in Strikeforce. And, while Herschel Walker is a newcomer to the sport and maybe Kimbo beats Herschel Walker, and I'm not even going to say that I think,
and that's why I said it.
I'd have to think about it. But, beyond that, where are you going with the guy? So I think, hey, let him go to Japan and see what he does. But, Kimbo also has to decide, do I want to do this going?
We should give Matt Mitrione a little love. Meathead Did a good job, and he showed some versatility. Obviously, he was drilled very well by Pat Barry and came up with a nice game plan, and he's a good athlete.
He is. Obviously, you play in the NFL. He was a 4-year starter at Purdue, so, you have to be a fairly good athlete. Steve, I think Mitrione has a lot of ability. Now, he's kind of coming again from ground zero. And, he's fighting in the UFC that had he not gotten on tough and gotten a break, he wouldn't be anywhere close to the UFC. So, are there guys out there in other organizations that are better than he is right now? Sure there are. But I think that he's a guy that can develop. And, he may have to go out of the UFC to really, speed up his development and get where he wants to be. Because I think as he moves up the ladder, he's not going to get these kind of, soft touches that he's gotten. It turns out Marcus Jones, a great guy and a guy that, you wish would succeed just because of the kind of human being Marcus is. Marcus just didn't have a chin to compete in MMA, especially against anybody of any note. And then Kimbo, is very limited. But so Mitrione, when he starts to face some legitimate people, there's a big question there with him.